everybody. Welcome to the stream. I don't know if anybody can actually, if you can actually hear me or not. So I'm not on camera. So if you guys can hear me, say hello and let me know if the audio sounds okay. If it doesn't, then nobody says anything, I'll know I'm just sitting here talking to myself. In which case, hi Matt, how are you doing? I'm good, Matt. How are you doing? Audio is good. Okay, good. That's the kind of mood I'm in tonight. I'm a little silly. It's been a long day. For a Sunday, it has been a long day. We're going to install some Gentoo, hopefully. It's been a long time since I've tried. So I should put my phone on Do Not Disturb so that I can not have it dinging the whole time. Do an encrypted install. I don't. Let's just work on an install before we start making it, harder than it needs to be. We'll see. All right. We are going to get started here in just a minute. We'll give people time to join, and I'll just hang out for a bit. There's about a 50-50 chance of this not working, of course, as always. Like I said, it has been a very long time since I've done this, so and I've always had help before. So tonight I'm going to try to do it without help, or as little help as possible, because I'm not going to make this my next distro if I can't install it on my own. That's just not going to happen. So welcome everybody. We're going to have some fun. Or at least some fun. I'm sure I'm going to get some heckling as well, yeah. Matter of fact, I know for a fact I will. They were heckling on the Gentoo subreddit before I even started, so I'm sure that's going to happen. Anyways, I am going to move over to my other keyboard. So the good news is the stream should be fairly solid, because I'm streaming through my main PC. I'm going to be installing Gentoo. What you're looking at now on screen is actually my secondary PC, or one of my secondary PCs. This has a 12 core CPU in it and an NVIDIA card in it, so it should be fairly speedy, better than doing it on the ThinkCenter mini PC, which is what I planned on doing. So am I installing systemd? Probably not. I'll probably stick with openRC or whatever it is that they recommend. It's just easier to follow, because like I said, it's been a very long time since I've done this, so I'm going to stick to the straight instructions as much as possible, and then the next time I install, I'll spice it up a little bit and make it a Butterfest install. I plan on, if Gentoo really is going to be my next distro after I leave openSUSE in July, I want to make sure that I can do this on my own, because I don't want to have to deal with a script, or maybe just do a script on my own. So, all right, I'm going to be moving the microphone, so you guys will probably hear some squeaking. And you're getting closer to the fan, so the fan is probably going to be a little bit louder than normal. If it's too obnoxious, let me know. I'm also going to have a hell of a time actually seeing chat. Let's move you a little bit closer. I'm actually... My desk is actually so big, I'm way further away than I would normally be. So we're going to try to get this thing here. All right, so here we are. Now, I have been having some problems with this PC, so we'll see how that goes. I'm having a hard time getting the microphone where it needs to be. So let's... that might be better. Maybe. I don't know. I may end up having to move the microphone a little bit. I bought a whole pack of Lenovo ThinkCenters for my home lab. I'm using one of them now as a NAS, as a NFS server. That's what the other three, one of them ended up being a dud, and the other two I haven't really decided what I'm going to do with it yet. So all right. So let's see here. I'm going to need to zoom in so I can actually see some stuff here. So the Gentoo Handbook is an effort to centralize essential documentation for initial Gentoo installation and basic system administration. The handbook contains the installation instructions for an internet-based install and additional chapters for working with Gentoo's native software tools, such as the openRC init system and Portage Package Manager. I understood all those words. That's a good start. All right. So Gentoo is available on many architectures. We shouldn't need to mess around with that. Viewing the handbook. The list below gives a high-level overview of the architecture supported by various Gentoo Linux projects. It is important to choose the correct architecture before proceeding with the associated section of the handbook. Be sure to verify the CPU's architecture before moving forward. So I'm going to be using AMD 64, the x86. Okay, so installing Gentoo. All right, so you got to remember, I've never actually followed the instructions. Usually I've had help. So we're going to go over here, put this here. So we will need a terminal. So console. Wow, that's not how you spell console. There we go. And like so. All right, and we will zoom in here so that you guys can see. All right. I am using Catchy OS tonight, by the way, just in case anybody wondered what I'm using. My original plan was Kubuntu, but I could not get it to work. It was just running obnoxiously slow. Look, it took 10 minutes to boot up into the live ISO, so that was not going to happen. So that's what's going on there. I'm on KDE right now. Hyperland is on my main computer. You guys can't see it. I mean, I suppose if you actually wanted to see well, no, I could actually show you my main PC, but might as well not mess with the stream. KDE Wayland. Yes, I believe this is Wayland, but I'm not sure. It's the Catchy OS live ISO. Need a little bit extra cord here in my. You know, why am I wearing my headphones? They're not plugged in. That's silly. All right. All right. Installing Gentoo. All right. The good news is you guys aren't catching the screen breaks. So, for whatever reason, my monitor actually keeps flashing, and I don't know why. It did it on Kubuntu. It's done it on Windows. It doesn't do it on openSUSE. So, we don't know what's going on there. About the Gentoo installation. This chapter introduces the installation approach documented within this handbook. Choosing the right installation medium. It is possible to install Gentoo in many ways. This chapter explains how to install Gentoo using the minimal live image, configuring the network, preparing the disks. So, I think we can skip right to this, to be honest with you. So, first, let's just do LSB, okay. So, wow, Matt, you really can't type in LSB, okay. This is going to go well. So we're going to be going on NVMe 0 and 1. That's where we're going to be installing from. So, block devices. Scroll right down. Let's take a good look at a disk-oriented aspects of Gentoo Linux and Linux in general. This is going to be good. This is going to be the hardest part of this, is that they're very, very wordy instead of just telling you what to do. They want to teach you. Which Arch-based distro do you prefer? I don't really have one right now at the moment, to be honest with you. I haven't used one in ages. The last one I used was Arco, and that is gone. What did I call it? Did I call it Crunchy OS? What did I call it? I don't even know. I've never actually used it, so this will be my first time. I just happened to have it on Ventoy and decided to use it. Am I installing on the running system? Yes. You can skip a lot of the top if you're familiar with partition schemes. There's a lot of info there. You should probably just use GPT. Yeah, we're going to see where we go. I do need to switch this around, though, so it's actually closer to me. Come on, KD. There you go. Wait a minute. This is... I don't even... This says CashOS, not CrunchOS. I don't even know what the hell I'm using. That's funny. All right. The latest solid-state technology, blah, blah, blah. The block devices above represent an abstract interface to the disk. User programs can use these block devices to interact with the disk without worrying about whether the drives are SATA, SCSI, or something else. The program can simply address the storage on the disk as a bunch of contiguous, randomly accessible 4D96-byte blocks. See, it's paragraphs like that make people think Gentoo's hard to install. Normal people are going to like that. What the fuck? Why do I need to know that? Partition tables. Although it is theoretically possible to use raw unpartitioned disk to house a Linux system when creating a Butterfest RAID, for example, which we're not going to do, this is almost never done in practice. Instead, disk block devices are split up into smaller, more manageable block devices. On AMD 64 systems, these are called partitions. There are currently two standard partitioning technologies in use: MBR, sometimes also called DOS disk label, and GPT. These are tied to the two boot process types: legacy BIOS boot and UEFI. The GUID partition table, GPT setup, also known as GPT disk label, uses 64-bit identifiers for the partitions. The location, blah 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 blah. That's also maximum partition size is much larger. Okay. When a system software interface between the operating system and the firmware is UEFI instead of BIOS, GPT is almost mandatory as compatibility issues will arise with DOS disk label. GPT also takes advantage of checksumming redundancy. Okay, important. There are a few caveats regarding GPT. Using GPT on a BIOS-based computer works, but the user won't be able to dual boot with a Microsoft Windows operating system. Not a big deal. All of my things use GPT. Some buggy old motherboard firmware, which is probably what I have, configured to boot into BIOS legacy mode, might also have problems booting into GPT. The master boot record. Is this a serious installer for the meme? I'm going to install it. I mean, I don't understand the meme part of it. I don't do memes. But we're going to do a meme. I'd install Linux from scratch. Let's see here. The master boot record sector also calls the DOS boot record sector, DOS disk label, and more recently, in contrast to GPT. I don't really need to know any of that because we're not going to be using that. Alright, advanced storage. The official Gentoo boot media provides support for LVM. LVM can combine physical volumes such as partitions or disks into volume groups. Volume groups are more flexible than partitions and can be used to define RAID groups and caches on fast SSDs for slow hard drives. Although usage is not covered in the handbook, LVM is fully supported in Gentoo. Don't need to know that because I'm not going to use an LVM. Default partitioning scheme. I'm not going to be able to talk. Throughout the remainder of the handbook, we will discuss and explain two cases. Yeah, I'm not going to be using Butterfest for this one. I'm just going to go as straight and vanilla as possible. But we're going to carry on. Alright, so we got the first row of the following table contains exclusive information for either a GPT disk label or a DOS legacy BIOS disk label. When in doubt, proceed with GPT since AMD 64 machines manufactured after the year 2010 generally report. Okay. If this suffices information, the advanced reader can skip directly to actual partitioning. Alright. I might actually need to know that. Alright. How many partitions and how big very much depends on considering the trade-offs and choosing the best options for the circumstance. Separate partitions or volumes have the following advantages. However, multiple partitions have certain disadvantages as well. Okay. Swap space. What is the EFI system partition? When installing Gentoo on a system partition that uses UEFI to boot the operating system, it is essential that an EFI system partition ESP is created. The instructions below contain the necessary pointers to correctly handle this operation. The ESP must be a FAT variant, sometimes VFAT on Linux systems. The official UEFI systems specifications denotes FAT 12, 16, and 32. File systems, blah, blah, blah. Okay. What is the BIOS partition? A BIOS boot partition is very small, is not required for an okay, so we don't need to know that. Partitioning the disk with GPT for UEFI. The following parts explain how to create. Oh, we're actually going to get to finally do some stuff. Cool. The following parts explain how to create the example partition layout for a single GPT disk device which will conform to the UEFI specification and discoverable partitions specification. DPS is a specification provided as part of the Linux user space API. Group specification is recommended but entirely optional. The specifications are implemented using fdisk utility, which is part of the sysapps util Linux package. The table provides the recommended default for a trivial Gentoo installation. Additional partitions can be added according to personal preferences and system design goals. Okay. So we're going to do sudo su. That way we're in root. LSB all right. If I miss the chat, just know I'm focusing on this. So if I miss something you guys said, I apologize. We're going to go ahead and carry on though. So we're going to do fdisk/dev/nvme0 Okay, welcome to things. So we're going to p to print. All right, so this particular disk was configured to house 2 Linux file systems, each corresponding with partition listed as Linux, as well as a swap partition. Pressing the G key will instantly remove all existing disk partitions and create a new GPT disk label. So we're going to press G. Okay. Alternatively, to keep the existing GPT disk label, consider removing the existing partitions one by one from the disk. Press D to delete the partition. For instance, to delete an existing dev SDA1, do that. We don't need to do that. We just have all of them. So if we just do P, we should see that. Yep, good. All right. I should take a shot every time I make a mistake. I don't think that's good for anybody. All right. Now that the in-memory partition table is empty, we're ready to create some partitions. Yay! Creating the EFI system partition. A smaller ESP is possible but not recommended, especially given it may be shared with other OSs. First, create a small EFI system partition, which will also be mounted as /EFI. Press N to create a new partition, followed by 1 to select the first partition. When prompted for the first sector, make sure that it starts from 2048, which is the default, which may be needed for the bootloader, and hit enter. Okay. When prompted for the last sector, type 1 + 1G to create a 1 GB in size partition. Okay, so + 1G. Okay, like so. Enter. Okay. Created partition 1 Linux file system size 1 GB. Partition 1 contains a VFAT signature. Do you want to remove the signature? Press Y for yes. Oops. Probably capital Y. Okay. Hit enter. Okay. Mark the partition as an EFI partition. So press T, like so. Partition type or alias. So it says 1. Okay, enter. All right. Change type of partition Linux file system to EFI system. Hey, look at that. We did something successfully, hopefully. All right. Next, to create the swap partition, press N again. So we're going to press N again. Okay. We're going to create a new partition, then press 2. Okay. To create the second partition, dev SDA2. Which is not quite right because we're doing NVMe, but that's okay. It's basically the same thing. When prompted for the first sector, hit enter. When prompted for the last sector, press type +4G or any other size you want for the swap space to create a partition of 4 GB in size. Okay, so we're going to enter there, and we're going to do plus, and we're going to do 8G. I'm going to give it a little bit extra. All right, hit enter. Okay, hit Y for yes. Okay, very good. Now, after this, press T to set the partition. Okay, T. 2 to select the partition just created, and then 19 to set the partition type to Linux swap. 19. Enter. Okay. I'm doing fdisk because that's what the instructions say to use, and I want to follow the instructions. And I've used fdisk before, so. All right. Creating the root partition. Finally, to create the root partition, press N again. Okay. And then 3 to create the third partition. When prompted for the first section, press Enter. When prompted for the last section, press Enter again to create a partition that takes up the rest of the remaining space on the disk. Okay. Note: setting the root partition's type to Linux root x64 is not required, and the system will function normally if it's set to the Linux file system type. This file system type is only necessary for cases where a bootloader that supports it is used and an fstab file is not wanted. So we don't need to worry about that. After creating the root partition, press T again. Okay, 3 for that partition. And then select the partition just created. Then type 23 to set the partition for Linux root. Okay, Enter. Okay. After completing these steps, pressing P should display the partition table that looks similar to the following. Okay, so we have a EFI system, Linux swap, and mine's 8 gigabytes, and then Linux root. Saving the partition layout, press W. Okay, we're going to do that. Okay. Gentoo is easy to install and fun. Well, we're going to find out how easy it is, aren't we? Anything bad about... What's wrong? I don't think there's anything bad with the CF disk. I just am more familiar with fdisk. And it's what's in the instructions, so it's easier to follow. Raphael, I'm not sure you're going to lose the Gentoo fear. This may end up being just as horrendous as you expect it to be, but we're doing okay. Just to let everybody know, I do have somewhat of a time limit, so I'm hoping to be done by 10:30ish. So it's a little bit before 8:30 now, so we have 2 hours. If I can get a bootable system in that time, I'll be very happy. And if I'm at that point and I find a good stopping point, like Gentoo's installed, but I haven't got Wayland or anything installed yet, we'll stop the stream and we'll come back next Sunday. But we'll see how far we get. All right, so partitioning the disk with MBR BIOS for legacy boot, we don't need to do that. Okay, creating spot partition. These are all the things you need to do if you're using MBR. Creating file systems. Warning: using SMD or NVMe drive, it is wise to check for firmware upgrades. Some Intel SSDs, in particular, require a firmware upgrade for possible data corruption. I'm not using an Intel SSD, so we should be fine. At least I don't think I am. All right, introduction. Now that the partitions have been created, it's time to place a file system on there. In the next section, the various file systems that Linux supports will be described. We're not going to read through all of them. We're just going to use ext4. Readers that already know which file system to use can continue with applying a file system to a partition. The others should read on to learn about the available file systems. We're just going to go ahead and skip, because eventually I will come back through and do an install with Btrfs. If I'm going to use Btrfs as my main distro after openSUSE, which is still not a 100% thing, I will be using Btrfs. But right now I'm just going to do straight up ext4. It's just easier. All right, so we're going to skip to this. All right. To create a file system on a partition or volume, there are user space utilities available for each possible file system. Click the file system's name in that table below for additional information on each file system. So we're going to be using ext4, like so, like this. All right, we actually didn't need to. I think, for instance, to have a root partition as XFS, as used in the example partition structure, the following commands must be used. EFE. All right, let's see. Activating the spot partition. All right. The handbook recommends new partitions as part of the installation process, but it's important when known to note running any makefs command will erase any data contained within the partition. When necessary, ensure any data that exists within is appropriately backed up before creating a new system. Not a big deal. This is a throwaway NVMe, so it's not that big a deal. All right, for instance, blah, blah, blah. All right, so I guess we are going to have to go here in order to actually see how to do this with ext4. ext3, that's not helpful. Use flags. Mounting. Create specifically an ext4 file system. And the only one we need to do that for is the this one here, the Linux root, I think. Let's go back here. All right, so for instance, what they really should do is just assume you're going to use ext4 and then put a link to all the rest of them here and then put instructions for ext4 here. Give me just one moment. I'm going to grab a water. I got my little doggy in here tonight, so you guys will probably hear me saying, "Oh, little dog. Hi, bub." She has to stay in here with me, otherwise she goes out to the living room and barks at the TV. You can get back up there and lay down if you want. We're a long ways away from being done. They assume XFS because it's better. Well, then we'll just use XFS then if it's better. I actually do use XFS on openSUSE for my home partition. All right, so we're going to do make XFS wow dot XFS, and then we're going to do dev NVMe 0 N1 P3, which is this one here. I don't think I have to do this in order, so it should be fine. So we're going to enter, so make sure that's right. So NVMe 0 N1 P3. Okay. Okay, very good. So we're going to go and clear this, and then we're going to do LSBLK maybe? LSBL. Well, I cannot type tonight at all. All right. Yep, good. Okay, so now we want to do make fs dot vfat dot vfat, and then dash f 32 slash dev slash NVMe 0, and then the one we're looking for is N1P1, N1P1, like so. Okay. And then we can skip the legacy BIOS part. When using the ext4 file system on a small partition less than 8 GB, the file system should be created with the proper options to reserve enough inodes. We're not using ext4, so we shouldn't have to worry about that. Activating the swap partition. So the next thing we're going to do is mkswap, like so, slash dev slash NVMe N1 P2, like so. Okay. Now, installations which were previously started but did not finish the installation process can resume the installation from this point in the handbook. Use this link as a permalink. Resumed installations start here. Okay. To activate the swap partition, we just do swap on, well, I cannot type, slash dev NVMe 0 N1 P2, like so. Okay, this activation step is only necessary because the swap partition is newly created within the live environment. Once the system has been rebooted As long as the swap partition is properly defined with an FS tab or other mount mechanism, swap space will be activated automatically. Okay. I agree, Butterfest is better, but we're not doing that tonight. We're just going to stick with the tried and true method. Once I know I can install Gentoo, then I'll start making it more complicated and add the Butterfest stuff and maybe learn how to compile the kernel or something. I don't know. All right, so we need to do make directory -p /mnt/Gentoo. Okay. And we need to mount /dev/nvme 0n1p3 in /mnt Gentoo, like so. All right. For EFI installs only, the ESP should be mounted under the root partition location. Okay, so I need to remember not to skip stuff. That's gonna be my biggest downfall, is skipping the text in between the commands. I think that's where I failed before, is I skipped something I wasn't supposed to. Continue creating additional mount points necessary for any additional custom partitions created during the previous steps using the make directory command. With mount points created, it is time to make the partitions accessible via the mount command. Mount the root partition. For EFI installs only, the ESP should be mounted under the root partition location. So make directory -p and then /mnt/Gentoo/EFI. Okay. Continue mounting additional custom partitions when necessary using the mount command. Continue mounting additional custom. If /temp needs to reside on a separate partition, be sure to change the permissions after mounting. Okay, here's the first place where I think I'm going to need help. Let me see something. Okay, so I have a question for those of you who know what you're talking about in the chat. It doesn't say anything here about actually mounting the EFI system, but it says continue to do that. Is that? I'm assuming I need to do it then, right? It's weird that they skipped that if you actually need to do that. By the way, ChatGPT says that you need to mount it. Okay. And yes, I have AI up here just in case I need help and you guys aren't around. I swear this is the first time I actually turned to it, so we're just going to do that. So mount /dev nvme 0n1 p1 into /mnt/Gentoo/EFI. You're a Hamburg writer, I can help. Might I recommend going into the handbook and adding this step, because it just it kind of skips over it. All right. Later in the instructions, the proc file system, a virtual interface with the kernel, as well as other kernel cyto file systems will be mounted. But first, the Gentoo stage file must be extracted. All right, and moving on to the next step. All right. Okay, he's doing it wrong. Well, somebody just told me to do it. I mean, it's not hard to unmount. So which is it? Fine, we will umount /dev nvme 0n1p1. There, unmounted. See, this is where my first Gentoo install went really wrong. Not this specific spot, but when I needed help, I had 6 people, all with a different answer. Matty Ice, if you're going to help me, I need to be able to read what you're talking about. I have no AF yet Chirut means. I got the Chirut part. I think you mean after. When you type like that, it makes me think that you're typing fast because I'm about to blow my computer up. All right, so we're just going to assume that we don't need it mounted because you guys, if this where my install fails, I'm going to blame you guys. All right. The stage file acts as the seed of a Gentoo install. Stage files are generated with Catalyst by the release engineering team. Stage files are based on specific profiles and contain an almost complete system. When choosing a stage file, it is important to pick one with profile targets corresponding to the desired system type. While it is possible to make major profile changes after an installation has been established, switching requires substantial effort and consideration and is outside the scope of this installation manual. Switching init systems is difficult, but switching from no multilib to multilib requires extensive Gentoo and low-level toolchain knowledge. In other words, make the choice correctly now. Tip: most users should not need to use the advanced tarballs options. They are for atypical or advanced software or hardware configurations. openRC is a dependency-based init system responsible for starting up system services once the kernel has booted. That maintains compatibility with the system provided init system, normally located in /sbin init. It is Gentoo's native and original init system, but is also deployed by a few other Linux distributions and BSD systems. openRC does not function as a replacement for the sbin init file, but by default, and is 100% compatible with Gentoo init scripts. This means a solution can be found to run the dozens of daemons in the Gentoo ebuild repository. We're going to go with openRC, by the way. Multilib 32 and 64-bit. Every architecture has a multilib option. Many only run with native code. Multilib is most commonly applied to AMD 64. How many Linux guys does it take to install Gentoo? The answer is all of them. Just leave it mounted. It's already unmounted. Do I need to mount it again? It's a good question to I guess ask now before I all right. So downloading the stage file. So we're going to cd into /mnt Gentoo. All right. Okay. Pocky says it doesn't matter if you mount it now or not, usually. All right. So we're setting the date and time. Stage archives are generally obtained using HTTPS, which requires relatively accurate system time. Which, by the way, you can see down here that I'm not on a good system time. All right, well, we will mount it later when it tells the mount. All right, stage archives are generally obtained using HTTPS, which requires relatively accurate system time. Clock skew can prevent downloads from working and can cause unpredictable errors if the system time is adjusted by any considerable amount after installation. The correct date and time can be verified with the date. This is going to be very wrong. Well, get off me. Caps lock. That's not anywhere well, it's UTC. I suppose that somewhere in the world that might be the right thing. All right. If the display time is off by more than a few minutes, which it should be updated using one of the following commands: automatic. Using NTP to correct clock skew is typically easier and more reliable than manually setting the system clock. Cronny D, part of the NetMISC cronny, can be used to update the system clock to UTC. So maybe this is the right time, and I just don't know what the hell UTC means. Tell it in American, okay? American, because in America we don't use that nonsense. CHRONYD-Q. Not installed. Okay. That means you can't install. I'm not CH rooted into anything, so I can't be installing that. So, okay. It says it's okay. Like I said, I'm American. We don't know. I don't know that nonsense. All right. Yeah, let's do the whole epoch thing if I need to do that. We're just gonna skip that. All right. Those using environments with fully graphical web browsers will have no problem copying a stage file URL from the main website's download section. We're going to open that up. We're going to need that. Simply select the appropriate tab, right-click the link to the stage file, and then click Copy Link to copy the link to the clipboard. Then paste the link to the wget utility on the command line to download the stage file. So first, let's actually make sure we have Git. I don't think we're going to need Git. Wget. Wget's installed. Good. All right. All right. So we're going to go here. All right. Here's where we're going to need to find out where we're going to need to. So here's the stage archives. openRC is the one that I think we need. Is it the desktop profile openRC that we're going to need? I know I don't technically need Git. I'm just in a habit when I install wget to install Git. All right, we're going to go with this one. All right, we're going to go ahead. We don't actually need to download it. We just need to copy the link. There we go. All right, so we're going to go with wget, Control-Shift-V, oops, that's not what I needed. Why didn't that work? Control-Shift-V, there we go. And there's an extra S all the way there at the beginning. Because of course there is. All right, like so. I think that's where we need to go. All right. All right. Well, so far nothing has exploded. All right, so we need to go. So we've now downloaded it. Verifying and validating. So we didn't skip the utar part. After the stage file download completes, it's possible to verify the integrity and validate the contents of the stage file. Those interested should proceed to the next section. Those not interested in verifying and validating the stage file, which I'm not, can close the command line browser by pressing Q and then move directly to unpacking the stage file. Which, that link don't work. All right. All right, installing a stage file. So, once the stage file has been downloaded and verified, it can be extracted using tar. So, we do tar dash, no dash, xpvf, like so. Stage, okay. Dash attrs dash include equals this star period star this dash dash numeric dash owner dash c slash mnt slash Gentoo. Okay. Hopefully I didn't misspell anything there. Apparently I did. Okay, so we can just, fuck. All right, so we have done all of that. Also, thank you, Gentoo Handbook, for explaining all that stuff for me. That's actually helpful. All right, configure compile options. Introduction. To optimize the system, it is possible to set variables which will impact the behavior of Portage, Gentoo's officially supported package manager. All those variables can be set as environment variables using export, but setting via export is not permanent. Technically, variables can be exported via the shell's profile or RC files. However, that is not best practice for basic system administration. Portage reads the make.conf file when it runs, which will change runtime behavior depending on the values saved in the file. Make.conf can be considered the primary configuration file for Portage, so treat its contents carefully. A commented listing of all possible variables can be found in additional documentation on make.conf can be found by running man5 make.conf. For successful Gentoo installation, only the variables that are mentioned below need be set. Fire up an editor. In this guide we use Nano. I should just quit right now. Rage quit even. Vim, fuckers. Vim. Sorry. I understand. It's okay. You're installing Gentoo, but you can't use a real man's editor. I'm just saying. I don't know. Actually, I'm gonna. Vim is installed. That's good. All right, so we're gonna use Vim / mnt Gentoo etc portage and then make.conf like so. All right, good. All right, so it says from the make.conf example file, it's obvious how the file should be structured. Commented lines start with hashtag. Other lines define variables using the variable equals value syntax. Several of those variables are discussed in the next section. Use ed. Get out of my chat, Matty Ice. Nobody uses ed. Even ed doesn't use ed. All right. Let's see. Why are you doing this to yourself? Cute. It's not that bad. It could be worse. It could be Linux from scratch. Gentoo is easy. Well, we're going to find out how easy it is. We're working on it. I personally prefer Nano at terminal text editor. Dan, I'm sure we could be friends in other contexts, but in this one, you and I are going to have to disagree. Use Emacs, then you really need to leave. Somebody ban that guy. Just kidding. All right. That was a good break. All right, so let's see here. We are at 8:49. We're making some progress. The CF flags and CXX flags variables define optimization flags for GCC, C, and C++ compilers, respectively. Although those are defined generally here, for maximum performance, one would need to optimize these flags for each program separately. The reason for this is because every program is different. However, this is not manageable, hence the definition of these flags in the make.conf file. In make.conf, one should define the optimization flags that will make the system the most responsive generally. Don't place experimental flags in this variable. Too much optimization can make programs misbehave, crash, or even worse, malfunction. The handbook will not explain all possible optimization options. To understand them all, read the GNU online manuals. I'm definitely going to do that. Or the GCC info page. The make.conf example file itself also contains lots of examples and information. Don't forget to read it too. A first setting is the -march equals, or the mtune flag, which specifies the name of the target architecture. Possible options are described in the make.conf example file as comments. A commonly used value is native, as that tells the compiler to select the target architecture for the current system, the one users are compiling Gentoo on. A second option is the -0 flag, that is a capital O, not a 0. You want to know what? Kudos for that, because that does look like an O, not a 0. Or that does look like a 0, not an O. Which specifies the GCC optimization class flag. Possible classes are S for size optimized, 0 for no optimizations, 1, 2, or even 3 for more speed optimization flags. Every class has the same flags as the one before, plus some extras. -02 is the recommended default. -03 is known to cause problems when using system-wide, so we recommend to stick to 02. Another popular optimization flag is -pipe, which pipes rather than temporary use pipes rather than temporary files for communication between the various stages of compilation. It has no impact on the generated code, but uses more memory. On systems with low memory, GCC might get killed. In that case, do not use this flag. I have 16 gigabytes. I think it should be fine. Using -foment frame pointer, which doesn't keep the frame pointer in a register for functions that don't need one, might have serious repercussions on the debugging of applications. When the CF flags and CXX flags variables are defined, combine the several optimization flags in one string. The default values contained in the stage file archive should be good enough. The following is just one example. Keep the flags simple. All right, well, I think, so we can just basically copy, I think we can just copy this, right? O2 pipe, O2-pipe, and we just need to add March native, right? Okay, so if we just do -March, like so, equals native, like that. So -March equals native -O2 pipe. And the rest of these are just the same as what's here. Okay. Although GCC optimization article has more information on how the various compilation options can affect system, the safe CF flags article may be more practical place for beginners to start optimizing their system. You know, what you should do is just make the best, most practical place for beginners to start here, instead of, you know, confusing the crap out of them. All right. Many programs are now written in Rust, which has its own way of optimizing. By default, Rust optimization is to level 3 on all release builds unless a project changes it, so this should be left as is. A full optimization list, known as a codegen, that can be passed to the Rust compiler is available here. The most useful optimization would be to tell Rust compiler for your CPU following the following examples. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one. I don't think I need to do the Rust thing, to be honest with you. All right, makeops. Makeops variable defines how many parallel compilations should occur when installing a package. As of portage version 3.0.31, if left undefined, portage's default behavior is to set the makeops value to the same number of threads obtained by nproc. Further, as of portage 3.053, if left undefined, portage's default behavior is to set makeops load average value to the same number of threads returned by nproc. A good choice is the smaller of the number of threads the CPU has, or the total amount of system RAM divided by 2 gigabytes. Warning, using a large number of jobs can significantly impact memory consumption. A good recommendation is to have at least 2 gigabytes of RAM for every job specified. When using parallel emerges --jobs, the effective number of jobs can grow exponentially up to make jobs multiplied by merged jobs. That's a lot of jobs in one sentence there, bro. Sorry, the editor came out at me. This can be worked around by running a localhost only distcc configuration, which will limit the number of compiler instances per host. Okay, so we need makeups, Control C, and I think that this can go. Oh, hold on a second. We need to go here. Whoa, in insert mode. In Control Shift V. All right. The man page section for the parallel install feature helps. Using Rust would be an extra complication. Yeah, Zen, you say that, but I don't know what that means. Can you not just copy what they have here? This would be J4L5, so it'd be. It doesn't really tell you what those things mean in this. This is a very poorly written part of the manual. Set makeops jobs value to the same number of threads returned by nproc. Set the makeops load average value slightly above the number of threads returned by. Please replace 4 as the appropriate system. So I'm best just leaving this out. All right, we're just going to leave this out. Why? I hate not having my Vim config here. All right. All right. All right. All right. Search for makeops man make platform. Update the file to match the personal preference and save. Then quit references, removing installing the base system. Wow. All right. Give me one more second. I'm going to go get another water. I've been very, very thirsty. You're going to have to look up, pup. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just going to grab 2. That way. No, you're going to stay in here. All right. I don't think I'm going to have significant RAM constraints, mainly because I'm not doing anything on this system other than running Cache or whatever the hell I'm running. I think it's called Cache. I think I called it Crunchy. Wasn't there something called Crunchy like a long time ago? Maybe there still is. One thing I know for sure that Linux distro devs and FOSS developers can't name anything, so it's no wonder we're all confused. All right. Now, let's see here. One thing that still remains to be done before entering the new environment, and that is copying over the DNS information from etcresolve.conf. This needs to be done to ensure that the networking still works even after entering the new environment. etcresolve.conf contains the name servers for the network. To copy this information, it is recommended to pass the --dereference option to the cp command. That ensures that if /etcresolve.conf is a symlink, that the link's target file is copied instead of the symlink itself. You want to know what? I didn't know that existed. That would have helped me a lot on my last install of openSUSE, because I did that with bash rc. Otherwise, if in the new environment, the symbolic link would point to a non-existing file, as the link's target is most likely not available inside the new environment. Okay, so we should just be able to copy this. Control C, do this, hit enter. Okay, mounting the necessary file system. If using Gentoo's install media, this step can be replaced by simply arch croot mount Gentoo, which we're not doing because we're in some other ISO. In a few moments, the Linux root will be changed towards the new location. The file systems that need to be made available are proc, sys, dev, and run. The proc location will be mounted on /Gentoo mount Gentoo proc, whereas the others will be bind mounted. The latter means that, for instance, /mount Gentoo sys will actually be /sys. It is just a second entry point to the same file system, whereas mount Gentoo proc is a new mount instance, so to speak, of the file system. So I think we just copy these, if I remember right. Okay, Control C, enter. Okay. Control C, enter. All right. We're going to go ahead and keep going here. Control C, enter. Okay. Control C, enter. Control C, enter. Control C, enter. Finally, Control C, enter. Okay, so wait a minute. Yeah, they should put that thing here before up here. So, All right, Zen, seeing how you caught that, do I need to figure out how to remove those --meg--r slave things, since I'm not using systemd? Or is it okay that I leave it the way that it is? Okay, it won't hurt. All right. When using non-Gentoo installation media, this might not be sufficient. Some distributions make /dev shm a symbolic link to /run shm, which, after the ch root, becomes invalid. Making /dev shm a proper temp can fix this. So I think I need to do this, right? Because I'm using a different install media. We should give a little more information on what this means. So the test part, your install media is fine. Yes, do the test. Okay, we're going to go do this. If you get no output whatsoever, it doesn't tell you what that means, though. So that it tells you to run the test, but it doesn't tell you what the results of the test need to be in order for you to continue to go on. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, we did part of it. The last one didn't go through anyways. So, all right. Entering the new environment. Here we go. We're gonna get to use some Gentoo stuff. It's gonna be excited. We're only an hour in. At this rate, we'll be done by Wednesday. Hip Dad was right. All right. We're gonna go ahead and oops, get out of this. Go here. All right. Now, uh, now that all partitions are initiated and the base environment is installed, it is time to enter the new installation environment by cherooting into it. This means that the session will change its root, most top-level location that can be accessed from the current installation environment, installation CD or other installation medium, to the installation system, namely the initialized partitions. Hence the name change root, or chroot. Chroot. I should put that on a t-shirt. This cherooting is done in 3 steps. The root location is changed from / on the installation mediums to /mnt gentoo on the partitions using cheroot or arch cheroot if available. Some settings, those in Etsy profile, are reloaded in memory using source command. The primary prompt is changed to help us remember that this session is inside cheroot environment. So here we go. Control C, cheroot. Okay. Source. Okay. And export. All right. Cheroot. From this point, all actions performed are immediately on the new Gentoo Linux environment. Hooray! If the Gentoo installation is interrupted anywhere after this point, it should be possible to resume the installation at this step. There is no need to repartition the disks again. Simply mount the root partition and then run the steps above, starting with copying the DNS info to re-enter the working environment. This is also useful for fixing bootloader issues. More information can be found in the cheroot article. Preparing for a bootloader. Now that the new environment has been entered, it is necessary to prepare the new environment for a bootloader. It will be important to have the correct partition mounted when it is time to install the bootloader. UEFI systems. For UEFI systems /dev-sda1, which is not our partition but close, it was formatted with the FAT32 file system and will be used as the EFI system partition, ESP. Create a new EFI directory, if not yet created, and then mount ESP there. Haha. All right, so I'm pretty sure CD/EFI exists. Yes. Okay. So mount / actually, let's do that. Let's be okay. Just like so. So mount /dev/NVMe 01N1P1 to /EFI. Like so. All right. Yeah, here's the Mount EFI. I was giving it shit. It turns out I was just too happy to get there. All right. So we've done that. Configuring portage. Installing a Gentoo eBuild repository snapshot from the web. Next step is to install a snapshot of the Gentoo eBuild repository. This snapshot contains a collection of files that informs portage about the available software titles for installation, which profiles the system administrator can select, package or profile specific news items, etc. The use of eMERGE Web rsync is recommended for those who are behind restrictive firewalls. It uses HTTP FTP protocols for downloading the snapshot and saves the network bandwidth. Readers who have no network or bandwidth restrictions can happily skip down to the next section. This will fetch the latest snapshot, which is released on a daily basis from one Gentoo's mirrors installed onto the system. All right, let's see. Question is, do I need to do this part? Because I don't technically have any firewall or any restrictions like that. Also, we're up to 167 concurrent viewers. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Is this just starting? No, I'm not just starting. I've been going for an hour. But you haven't missed too much. I've basically partitioned things, mounted things, downloaded the stage 3 tarball, extracted it, and shrewded into the new system. That's where we're at so far. Christopher Hamill says just jump down. Okay, from this point onward, portage might mention that certain updates are recommended to be executed. This is because the system packages installed through the stage files might have newer versions available, blah, blah, blah. Okay. In order to download the source code quickly, it's recommended to select a fast, geographically close mirror. Portage will look in the mate.conf file for Gentoo mirrors available and use the mirrors listed in. It is possible to surf the Gentoo mirror list and search for a mirror or multiple mirrors close to the system's physical location, as those are most frequently the fastest ones. A tool called Mirror Select, which is the same thing Arch uses, I think. No, they use Reflector on Arch. That's right. Provides a pretty text interface for more quickly query and select suitable mirrors. Just navigate to the mirror of choice and press spacebar, select one or more mirrors. So we're going to use our first. Okay. You would not bother. It automatically finds ones if you don't set it to them. I'll just go ahead and skip it then. All right. Reading news items. Do we need to read the whole news thing that is kind of fetishized on Gentoo as far as I'm concerned. Like, I don't want to read the news. I'm sure it's important, but man, I'm much rather live in a box. Hi there, puppy dog. How you doing? I know it's warm in here. So I've gone through like 3 bottles of water already. Most optional but are for ricing. I do need to sync here. All right. So we're going to do that. All right. So merge sync. On slow terminals such as certain frame buffers, we'll just use this one. All right. Control C. See, if you have to do it, you really shouldn't call it optional. All right. Here we go. We're doing stuff. If you haven't already, I'd appreciate it if you left a like on the stream. It'd really help if you did that. And if you haven't obviously subscribed already, you should do that as well, because I do things like this somewhat often. All right, so we're going to read the news. When Gentoo eBuild repository is synchronized, portage may output informational messages similar to the following. News items were created to provide a communication medium to push critical messages to users via the Gentoo eBuild repository. To manage them, use eSelect News. The eSelect application is a Gentoo-specific utility that allows for a common management interface for system administration. In this case, eSelect is asked to use its news module. For the news module, 3 operations must be used, which with list and overview of the available news items is displayed. With read, the news items can be read. With purge, news items can be removed once they have been read and will not be reread anymore. So, well, we want to see what Gentoo CNN gives us. So we're going to do eSelect news list. All right. Migration required for openSSH and LDAP. I don't think any of these things I actually care about, though. The first time you read the news, you can more or less just focus on stuff from the last year or so, unless you want a history lesson. Well, some of that stuff is really old. Matter of fact, it's all really old. Is there stuff like more beyond that or something? I don't even know. All right. Um, all right. We've read the news. More information about the news reader is available through its man page. Okay. Choosing the right desktop profile. Choosing the right profile. Desktop profiles are not exclusively for desktop environments. They are also suitable for minimal window managers like i3 or Sway. A profile is a building block for any Gentoo system. Not only does it specify default values for use, C flags, and other important variables, it also locks the system to a certain range of package versions. These settings are all maintained by Gentoo's developers. To see what profile the system is currently using, run eSelect using the profile module. Okay. On an install media without a scrollable terminal, use less. Okay. We'll see if we need to use less. I don't know if we will or not. So we're going to do eSelect and then profile list, like so. We have a scrollable terminal. All right. To use systemd, select a profile which has systemd in the name, or vice versa. We're not using systemd. There are also desktop subprofiles available for some architectures, which include software packages commonly necessary for desktop experience. Warning: profile upgrades are not to be taken lightly. When selecting the initial profile, use the profile corresponding to the same version as the one initially used in the stage file. In other words, I'm assuming you want to make sure you're using the multi-lib stuff. If you're using multi-lib, no multi-lib. If you're using no multi-lib. Okay, that makes sense. All right. After viewing the available profiles for AMD64 architecture, users can select a different profile for the system. All right. Oh, look at that hip dad be modding. Thank you, hip dad. I don't know what that guy said, but I appreciate you modding. The first time I read the news, I already got that part, is with the new content at notifications. Okay. Good morning, Sir Robert Downey Sr. Welcome. 1 minute. Fun fact, the E in the whole bunch of Gentoo things comes from Enoch Linux, okay? Use the default if you're using openRC. Use the default. I'm assuming that means 1, right? But if I want Plasma or GNOME, right, I'm going to have to choose something different. All right, actually got to use the right mouse here, Matt. All right, scrolling down a little bit. So I need to decide what I'm going to install. I think I'm going to install GNOME. So I think I want like 25. Because I think GNOME is where I'm going to go. I know people want me to install Hyperland. I'm not installing Hyperland. Not on this one. We're going to go with a desktop environment. Just for ease of use. So you said 21? Does that take... No, I'm not going to choose Plasma. I'm going to choose GNOME. All right, we're going to do 25 for GNOME. All right. So it says eSelect profile set 25. Okay. eSelect profile list. And we should be able to see that 25 is now selected. Yes. Okay. Very good. All right, optional, adding a binary package host. Since December 2023, Gentoo's release engineering team has offered an official binary package host, colloquially known to just bin host. Clever. For use by the general community to retrieve and install binary packages. Adding a binary package host allows Portage to install cryptographically signed compiled packages. In many cases, adding a binary package host will greatly decrease the mean time to package installation and adds much benefit when running Gentoo on older, slower, and low-power systems. Repository configuration. The repository configuration for a bin host is found in Portage.etsy Portage bin repos.conf directory, which functions similar to the configuration mentioned in Gentoo eBuild repository section, which I don't remember. Excuse me. When defining binary hosts, there are two important aspects to consider. The architecture and profile targets within the sync URI value do matter and should align to the respective computer architecture and system profile selected in the choosing the right profile section. Selecting a fast geographically close mirror will generally shorten retrieval time. Review the mirror select tool mentioned in optional selecting mirrors section and review the online list of mirrors where the URL values can be discovered. All right, so we're going to do this. So we need to clear this out, and we need to do vim. Wait a minute, hold on. Vim's not installed. Damn. Nano. Slash Etsy. Portage. Bin repos. .conf. Gentoo. binhost.conf. Okay. All right, and then one we need is okay, like this. Let's see. I'm just gonna copy this thing. We can just copy this thing, right? I don't think we can actually just copy that thing. It has. We have to change this thing here to AMD 64. Is it? See, I'm getting there on my own with help. AMD 64, and then I think the profile is just a number, right? And I choose 25, like so. All right. No, 25 is the profile that I selected, dude. Okay, why is the profile number different here than the one we just selected? You have to explain. Hashtag confused. So is it 23 or 25? Because it's 23 here. All right, so 23 is what we need? Or all right. LQ Larry, you're not helping. All right, we're going to... we're going to put this at 23 because that's what people are saying, 23.0.0, because that's what it says up here. And then we will go back and look. So Control X, yes, I hate nano. So E select profile list. All right, and the one we selected was 25, which is right here. And it does say, in fact, say 23.0. Okay. All right. I think I did that right then. I think so. I hope so. All right. Installing binary package. Portage will compile packages from code sourced by default. It can be instructed to use binary portage packages in the following way. Get bin package option can be passed when invoking the emerge command. This method of binary package installation is useful to install only a particular binary package. Changes the system's default portage features variable, which is exposed through the /etc make.conf file. Applying the configuration change will cause portage to query the binary package host for packages to be requested and fall back to compiling locally when no results are found. I may do that eventually, but right now I'm fine. I think, right? Except for Zen, it wasn't already configured. It had literally it said profile up here, right here. See, it said I had to put the numbers in there. Or didn't I? All right. It doesn't matter. The question I have now is, do I need to do this? Appending the get bin package to the list of values within the features variable. Requires signatures. Please run the Gentoo for portage to set up the necessary keyring for verification. But it said to add another one. I'm just following the instructions, man. All right. So we're going to clear this out, and we're going to do nano/etc portage make.conf file. Oops, and we're not in Vim. Can't use Vim. And we will just go ahead and copy this here. Control C, like so. All right, we're just going to put this in there. I don't really care whether or not I use binary packages or not, so Control X, yes, enter. All right. Please run the Gentoo for portage to set up the necessary keyring for verification. So Getuto. Okay, optional. Configuring the use variable. Use is one of the most powerful variables Gentoo provides to its users. Several programs can be compiled with or without optional support for certain terms or certain items. For instance, some programs can be compiled with native GTK plus or with support for Qt. Others can be compiled without SSL support. Some programs can even be compiled with FrameBuffer support instead of X11 support. Most distributions compile their packages with support for as much as possible, increasing the size of the programs and startup times, not to mention an enormous amount of dependencies. With Gentoo, users can define what options for which a package should be compiled. This is where use comes into play. In the use variable users define keywords that are mapped onto compile options. For example, SSL will compile SSL support if the program supports it. -X will remove the X server support. Note that the minus sign in front. GNOME GTK-KDE-Qt5 will compile programs with GNOME and GTK support and not with KDE and Qt support, making the system fully tweaked for GNOME if the architecture supports it. The default use settings are placed in make.defaults file in the Gentoo profile used by the system. Gentoo uses complex inheritance system for system profiles, which will not be covered in depth during the installation process. The easiest way to check the currently active use settings is to run emerge info and select the line that starts with use. I don't think I actually have any set, so it should just be blank, right? Control-C. Apparently not. Okay. All right. So the above example is truncated. The actual list of use values is much, much longer, and indeed it is. The full description of the available use flags can be found in the system/var db repos gentoo profiles use.description. Inside the list command, scrolling can be done by using the up and down keys and exited by pressing Q. As an example, we show a use setting for the KDE-based system with DVD also and CD recording support. Enabling flags for KDE Plasma-based systems. All right, so we want to do this one here so we can actually look at these things. Control-C. All right. I've used Gentoo enough to know what use usually is. I'm just, all right. When a use value is defined in etc portage make.conf, it is added to the system's use flag list. Use flags can be globally removed by adding a minus sign in front of the value in the list. For example, to disable support for X graphical environments, -X can be used. Although possible, when setting -* which will disable all use flags except for the ones specified in make.conf, is strongly discouraged to do otherwise, blah, blah, blah. Some architecture, including AMD's 64x86, have use expand variable called CPU flags arch, where arch is replaced by the relevant system architecture name. Okay, this is used to configure the build to compile in specific assembly code or other intrinsics, usually handwritten or otherwise extra, and is not the same as asking the compiler to output optimized code for a certain CPU feature. Users should set this variable in addition to configuring their common flags as desired. A few steps are needed to set this up, so we need to do this. Okay, so we're gonna put out of this. We're not gonna worry about use flags right now, I don't think. The fuck? Pressed something wrong there, didn't I? All right. So we're going to copy this. Right, and then inspect the output manually if curious. Okay, then copy the output into package.use. Below is an example of the proprietary set package used for video cards. Substitute the name of the drivers to be used. All right. Well, let's see here. What do I need? I think So we need to put this in this file here. To below is an example of the proprietary package that set use for video cards. Substitute the name of the drivers used. All right. So we need to vim. Damn it. Nano / Etsy portage use 00 video _ cards. So, and this is not what I need. So I need this. I forgot that this computer has an NVIDIA card. So, like so. All right, let's see here. I think I can say, I think this is the way that's supposed to go, right? Details on various GPUs can be found in AMD, GPU, Intel, Lenovo, and NVIDIA proprietary articles. All right, well, we're just going to assume that we did that right. Thanks. Yes. Enter. All right. Optional. Configure the accept license variable. Okay. Starting with Gentoo Linux Enhancement Proposal 23, a mechanism was created to allow system administrators the ability to regulate the software they install with regards to licenses. Some want a system free of any software that is not OSI approved. Others are simply curious as to what licenses they are implicitly accepting. With a motivation to have more granular control over the type of software running on a Gentoo system, the accept license variable was born. Welcome. During the installation process, Portage considers the values set in the accept license variable to determine if the requested packages meet the system admin's determination of an acceptable license. I'm getting text messages. Let me see what this is about. All right. Sorry, my mama was calling me. Darth Vader, that's not what the handbook says, okay? The handbook says to put it in package.use. That's literally what it says right here. Hi there, bub. Are you gonna want to? You want to leave, don't you? Well, I suppose I can get up and let you out. All right. Oh yeah, you're a good dog. Yeah, you're a good dog. All right, give me just a second. I gotta let the dog out of the room. Look out. Shoot. All right. Wheeling myself back over here. All right. I know some other people do it differently, and there are multiple ways of doing it, but I'm going to follow the handbook for now. So maybe I will learn those alternative methods are better in my 2 years of using Gentoo, if that's what ends up happening. So some of the calling, okay, so we don't need to know, we're just going to use all of them. So currently set system-wide accessible values can be viewed via this. As visible in the output, the default value is to only allow software which has been grouped in the @free category to be installed. Specific licenses or licenses groups for a system, can be defined in the following locations. System-wide within the selected profile, this sets a default value. System-wide within the Etsy portage make.conf file, system administrators override the profile's default values within this file. Per package, the system-wide license default is the profile overridden within make.conf. So we just need to do This, we just want this part here, and we're doing nano / etc portage make conf. All right, and we want to set star and then close that, right? Do not use star if possible. Do not use it. All right, see, now I'm confused because some people are telling me to do it this way. Some people are telling me to do it, not do it that way. Yeah, I don't care about licenses. I'm going to be using some proprietary software, so that's what I prefer. I don't care. Get the package. Preferably with a biatch stamped on the end. Control X. Yes. Enter. All right. Optionally, system administrators can also define accepted packages per packages, blah, 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 blah. I don't need to do that. All right. Optional upgrading at world set. If the desktop environment profile target has been selected from a non-desktop stage file, the at-world update process could greatly extend the amount of time necessary for install process. This in a time crunch can work by this rule of thumb. The shorter the profile name, the less specific the system's at-world set. The less specific the at-world set, the fewer packages the system will require. Okay. Updating the system's at-world set is optional and will unlikely to perform functional changes unless one or more of the following options steps has been performed. A profile target different from the stage file has been selected. Additional use file X have been installed packages. Matt Jolly, I do in fact agree to contracts without reading them. I used iTunes for 30 years or 20 years without reading that damn user agreement. So I do. And so do you, by the way. I guarantee you've never fully read a user agreement or whatever the hell they're called. So, yeah. Okay, don't upgrade the world set until later. All right. Okay, well, it does say optional. The readers who are performing the install Gentoo speedrun may safely skip at world set updates until after their system has been rebooted into the new Gentoo environment. Readers who are performing a slow run can have portage perform updates to the package profile and use flag changes at the present time. Readers who added a binary host above can add get bin package or -g in order to fetch packages from the binary host. Removing obsolete packages. It is important to always dip clean after system upgrades to remove obsolete packages. Review the output carefully with a merge dep clean. Pretend to see if any of the to be cleaned packages should be kept if personally using them. To keep a package which would otherwise be dep cleaned, use emerge no replace foo. If happy, then proceed to the real deep clean. Okay, optional, using systemd as a system service. We don't need to do that because we're not using systemd. Configure locales. All right. Let me see. Yeah, this is not a speed run. All right. All right, let's see here. Most users will want to use only one or two locales on their system. Locales specify not only the language that the user should use to interact with the system, but also the rules for sorting strings, displaying dates and times, etc. Locales are case sensitive and must be represented exactly as described. A full listing of available locales can be found in user share that thing. Okay, supported system locales must be defined in the etc locale.gen file. So we're going to do nano / etc locale.gen. Okay, Oops, not in Vim. All right, we're going to scroll down here. We're going to find, oh, it doesn't have the, all right, the one we want is, I believe, this one here. All right. The following locales are an example to get both English, United States, and Germany. So it actually tells you to use both the ISO and the UTF. So do I need both of those? Yeah, I am bothered by UTC because I don't know what it means or where I'm from or what time it is. Because it is not 1:45 in the morning; it is 9:45 at night. So, yeah. All right. And we only need English because that's all I speak fluently. I don't need Spanish. That's the only other thing that I speak, somewhat, and not well enough to use. All right. The next step is to run locale gen command. This command generates all locales specified in that file. Okay, so Control X, yes, enter, locale, wow, so. All right. To verify that the selected locales are now available, do run locale -a. Okay. Yeah. All right. On system deinstalls, which are not there. Okay. So locale selection. Once done, it is now time to set the system-wide locale settings. Again, eSelect is used now with the locale module. So eSelect locale list. Okay. With eSelect number, the correct location can be set. So we want to use select 6. That's what I thought I would select. Okay, so eSelect locale set 6. And yeah, I know I can install Vim, but I might as well just... Alright. Manually, this can be accomplished through the etc.env file or for systemd, the locale.conf file. Okay. Setting the locale will avoid warnings and errors during kernel and software compilations later in this installation. Now reload the environment. Okay. For additional guidance through the locale session process, read the localization guide and the UTF-8 guide. Okay. Configuring the kernel. Someone's setting off fireworks out there. All right, we have exactly, well, a little bit under 45 minutes before I need to be done. So here's hoping that we, where are we in terms of configuring the kernel, configuring the system, installing tools, configuring the bootloader, and finalizing. So we got 4 more steps after this. We're trekking along, but we're running out of time. All right. On many systems, non-FOSS firmware is required for certain hardware to function. The syskernel Linux firmware package contains firmware from many but not all devices. So we need to do this, right? All right. Installing certain firmware. All right. We're going to do... I think my biggest issue so far with the handbook is that sometimes they use the word optional when it's not actually optional. So, while it's doing that, we're going to continue reading. Firmware files are typically loaded when the associated kernel module is loaded. That means the firmware must be built into the kernel using config extra firmware if the kernel module is set to Y instead of M. Okay. In most cases, building in a module with required firmware can complicate or break loading. SOF Sound Open Firmware is a new open source audio driver meant to replace the proprietary Smart Sound Technology SST audio driver from Intel. 10th Gen Plus and Apollo Lake Intel CPUs require the firmware for certain features, and certain AMD APUs also have support for firmware. SOF firmware support platforms matrix can be found here for more information. Well, the desktop that I'm using has a, to be honest with you, I don't know what it has. I know it has an NVIDIA card. I'm pretty sure that the CPU is an AMD. Um, if I run this and I don't need it, it's not going to hurt anything, right? All right. We're going to run it anyway because it says to do it. All right. Microcode. In addition to discrete graphics, hardware, and network interfaces, CPUs also require firmware updates. Typically, this kind of firmware is referred to as microcode. Newer revisions of microcode are sometimes necessary to patch instability, security concerns, or other miscellaneous bugs in CPU hardware. Microcode updates for AMD CPUs are distributed within the aforementioned sys-kernel Linux firmware package. Microcode for Intel CPUs can be found within this package here, which will need to be installed separately. See the microcode article for more information about how to apply microcode updates. Probably should. Let's open up a new tab here. I don't know if cache. It will tell me exactly what. Oh, I do actually have an Intel CPU. So do I need to do the microcode thing? It does, in fact, look like I have a i5 in this one. I didn't even know. I don't use this PC very much, so let's open this up here in a new tab. Intel specifics. I think I can just go down here and do. All right, so I'm gonna have my first. Dash micro code. That wasn't hard at all. Okay. Now, go back here. All right. Install kernel may be used to automate the kernel installation. Intra MFS generation, unified kernel image generation, and/or bootloader configuration, amongst other things. Implements two paths to achieving this: the traditional install kernel originating from Debian and systemd kernel install. Which one you choose depends, among other things, on the system's bootloader. By default, systemd's kernel install is used on systemd's kernels, while traditional install kernel is default for other profiles. Bootloader. Now it is time for you to think about which bootloader the user wants for the system. If unsure, follow the traditional layout selection below. Grub. Users of Grub People are out there celebrating them. All right. Making some progress, I think. So I think I can just run this, right? All right. Because we are going to use grub. All right. We don't need to do the systemd systems. All right. We're skipping some. All right. So users of grub can either use systemd's kernel install or the traditional grub deb install kernel. The systemd use flag switches between these implementations to automatically run grub make config when installing the kernel. Enable the grub use flag. No, because of course I didn't. Probably just fucked everything up. Because, you know, why? Why? All right. Um. All right. Do I need to? How do I uninstall it then, so I can start over, or do I need to? All right. So we're just gonna do that then. So we're gonna do nano / etc sys no portage package.use and then install kernel, and then we need to Control X, yes, enter. Okay, and then we can just go up and do this again, right? What? Why does it say minus grub here, but it says grub here? Also set the ugrd use flag if you are real. I don't know what that means. Because I'm a masochist, Matt Jolly. That's the reason why. Alright, we're just doing this. Alright. The kernel command line to use the new kernel should be specified in at kernel command line, for example. Okay. So this is for systemd. The kernel command line to use new kernel should be specified in /etc kernel command line, for example. I don't know what that means. And it doesn't do a good job of explaining what that means. All right, well, we'll just leave that there then. All right. UEFI-based computer systems technically do not need secondary bootloaders in order to boot kernels. Secondary bootloaders exist to extend the functionality of UEFI firmware during the boot process. That being said, using a secondary bootloader is typically easier and more robust because it offers a more flexible approach for quickly modifying kernel parameters at boot time. Note also that UEFI implementations strongly differ between vendors and between models, and there is no guarantee that a given firmware allows the UEFI specification. Therefore, EFI stub booting is not guaranteed to work on every UEFI-based system, and hence the use flag is stable masked, and testing keywords must be accepted for install kernel to use this feature. Okay. It should say that the whole systemd thing, if you're not using it, you don't need to do that then. It says nothing about systemd in this entire paragraph. All right. Traditional layout other than bootloaders. The traditional boot layout, Lilo syslinux, is used by default if the grub systemd use flags are not enabled. Okay, so we did that. No further action required. All right. An initial RAM-based file system or intra-MFS may be required for system to boot. A wide variety of cases may necessitate one, but common cases include kernels where storage file system drivers are modules, layouts where user and var are on separate partitions, and encrypted file systems. Distribution kernels are designed to be used with intra-FS, as many storage and file system drivers are built as modules. In addition to mounting the root file system, an intra-MFS may also perform other tasks such as, get out of my way, running file system consisting of check FSCK, as a tool to check and repair consistency of a file system in such an uncleanly shut down a system, providing a recovery environment in the event of late boot failures. Install kernel can automatically generate an intra-MFS when installing the kernel if the drcut or UGRD use flags are enabled. Is it Wednesday yet? Init RAM-FS. Thank you, Zen. I knew it was something like that. You guys knew I didn't know what I was talking about by the mumbling that I did every time I came across the word. So I guess the question is, do I need to do this here? I'm going to say yes. Control X. Yes. Enter. This is now the third time I've installed this package, by the way. Talk about efficiency. Yes, you do have to. No, you don't have to. Yes, you do have to. That's the Gentoo install experience that I signed up for. I'm pretty sure that my neighbors think that this is the 4th of July, given how many fireworks they're shooting off right now. It's also illegal in Michigan in most of the time, though it may not be now, given that we're in the middle of a... All right. Optional unified kernel image. A UKI combines, among other things, the kernel, the init RAM-FS, yay, the kernel command line into a single executable. Since the kernel command line is embedded into the unified kernel image, it should be specified before generating the unified kernel image. See below. Note that any kernel command line arguments supplied by the bootloader or firmware at boot are ignored when booting into secure boot and with secure boot enabled. A unified kernel image. Why bother telling us this if you're just going to spell it out every time? Currently, the only one available is systemd stub to enable it, but we're not using systemd, right? So there we go. All right, okay. And I think we can skip all this. UK IFI command line. You guys said we didn't need to do that. Note that while the decret can generate both an init RAM FS and unified kernel image, you can't. So we're still talking about that. Okay. Generic unified kernel image, systemd only. Kernel configuration and compilation. We're going to have some Linux. I'm almost sure that I have secure boot disabled on this computer. If it doesn't boot, I guess we'll know I don't have it disabled. Because I'm pretty sure I had to disable secure boot in order to get openSUSE to install. All right. Now it is time to configure and compile the kernel sources. For the purpose of the installation, 3 approaches to the kernel management will be presented. However, at any point post-installation, a new approach can be employed. Full automation approach, distribution kernels. A distribution kernel is used to configure, automatically build, and install the Linux kernel. It is associated modules and optionally, but enabled by default, the init RAM FS file. Future kernel updates are fully automated since they are handled through the package manager, just like any other system package. It is possible to provide a custom kernel configuration file if customization is necessary. This is the least involved process and is perfect for new Gentoo users due to it working out of the box and offering minimal involvement from the system administrator. Full manual approach and hybrid approach. Which one do I use? Yeah, I would use Gentoo kernel bin. Is that the first one? Or is that the third one? All right, so we need this one here. All right, okay. Distribution kernels are e-builds that cover the complete process of unpacking, configuring, compiling, and installing the kernel. The primary advantage of this method is that the kernels are updated to new versions by the package manager as part of at-world upgrade. This requires no more involvement than running an emerge command. Distribution kernels default to a configuration supporting the majority of hardware. However, 2 mechanisms are offered for customization. Save deconfig and config snippets. These see the project page for more information on configuration. Optional, signed kernel modules. The kernel modules and the pre-built distribution kernel are already signed. To sign the modules of kernels built from source enabled, the modules sign, use flag, and optionally specify the key to signing in etc portage make.conf. All right. I don't think that... Do I need to enable module signing? I don't even... I hate the... I wish someone would write the handbook with the optional stuff pulled out. Because the optional stuff just confuses the shit out of me. Do I actually need it or do I not know it? In order to know whether or not you need something that is optional, you need to know what you're doing. And I don't know what I'm doing. So... Okay, so they're saying I don't need module sign. Sorry. Optional sign the kernel image. Installing it. All right. System administrators who want to avoid compiling the kernel sources locally can instead use the prefiled kernel image. So we need -bin, right? I'm glad I didn't hit enter. No, I am going to murder everyone in the chat right now. You're all telling me something different. Stop confusing the moron, okay? You guys can't troll. You can't troll me when I'm trying to do this, okay? All right, we're adding the bin. Stop confusing the moron. You can't do it. All right. All right, here we go. All right, important distribution kernels such as syskernel, Gentoo kernel, and syskernel Gentoo bin are by default expect to be installed alongside init ramfs before running emerge. To install the kernel, users should ensure that it has been configured to utilize. And I hope it did. I'm just following along. All right. Yeah, I have 20 minutes. I have to be lazy. I honestly don't think I'm going to get much more done in 20 minutes, but we're going to see. Um, the real question is where I really need to do a stopping point. Otherwise, you guys are going to sit here and watch this for like an hour, and then I'll come back later. When will I complete the bash script for openSUSE? I kind of did. It's not great, though. All right. All right, you guys are saying I'm almost done. So we're gonna, once the kernel is installed, the package manager will automatically update it to newer versions. The previous versions will be kept until the package manager is requested to clean up stale packages. To reclaim disk space, stale packages can be trimmed to periodically running the dep clean. Alternatively, to specify cleanup on old kernel versions. Um, I mean, there shouldn't be any old kernel versions we just installed, so I think this would be not good. Post-install upgrade tasks. An upgrade of a distribution kernel is capable of triggering an automatic rebuild of the external kernel modules installed by other packages, for example, sysfs, zfs kmod, or NVIDIA drivers. This is highly recommended to enable this flag via the make.conf when using a distribution kernel. Um, Linux Mint is fine. All right. Wait a minute. Didn't they say he's already installed Gentoo and is already done? Why isn't he installing this for me then? All right, so we're going to do nano. Actually, first we're going to do something different. I know. It only took me till the end to actually install Vim. I should have just done it, but I was being a stubborn bitch. Oh, I want to thank everyone who's watched me do this. I appreciate so much. This is by far my highest like concurrent viewers like ever. I was like over 200 at one point. So if you've been watching me do this nonsense, I appreciate it. If you haven't hit the like button yet, please do so. I'd appreciate that. It helped more people find this and watch this and see what not to do. So Emacs is beyond me, Darth Vader. Thank you. I will learn all the nuances of portage eventually. I know some of them, but it's very rusty knowledge. It's been over 2 years since I've used anything Gentoo related, so it's gonna be a bit. I can't believe though that the kernel was installed faster than Vim. That blows my mind. I mean, what the fuck are you installing? That's the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. All right, now we should do Vim slash Etsy portage and then make.conf. Oh, glorious! I should have done this ages ago. All right. Oops, that's not what I needed. Not the right thing in the... All right. All right. Yeah, I know. I was just joshing. All right. If required, manually trigger such rebuilds by rebuilding the or unified kernel image. If required, manually trigger rebuilds by after kernel by. Do I need to do this part here? Oh, Hank, thank you for the super chat. Go install Go. Thank you. I appreciate that. Um. All right. I use Arch, by the way. I was told not to. Okay. All right, so I don't need to do this. All right. All right, installing the kernel sources. When installing and compiling the kernel for AMD64-based systems, Gentoo recommends the syskernel Gentoo sources package. Choose an appropriate kernel source and install it via emerge. Okay, let's see here. This will install Linux kernel sources and user source using the specific kernel version in the path. It will not create a symbolic link by itself without symlink use flag being enabled for the chosen kernel sources package. It is conventional for a user source Linux symlink to be maintained such that it refers to whichever sources correspond with the currently running kernel. However, this symlink will not be created by default. An easy way to create the symbolic link is to utilize eSelect's kernel module. Alright, well, it should tell you that you needed to skip this then. Alternative manual configuration. In case it was missed, this section requires kernel sources to be installed, so I'm assuming we can get rid of that too. It's always good to skip things. I'm hoping. Alright, I think we can skip all of this stuff then. Right? Hopefully I can skip all this stuff. Scrolling down. Optional signing the kernel image, which we didn't need to do. Architecture special kernel configuration. Compiling and installing. With the configuration now done, it's now time to compile. We didn't need to do that. We used the binary. Depreciation gen kernel modules, listing available kernel modules. You know what they really should do is color code these sections. That'd be so much better if they were color coded. All right. I need to keep going. All right. All right. Moving on to configure the system. Hopefully, I can, not have to do these things. All right. Configuring the system. All right. File system information, file system labels, and UUIDs. This is where we're going to create the Etsy file, I believe. Or not the Etsy file, the FS tab. That's what I meant. All right. File systems and UUIDs. Both MBR and GPT include support for file system labels and file system UUIDs. These attributes can be defined in Etsy FS tab as alternatives to the mount command to use when attempting to find and mount block devices. File system labels and UUIDs are identified by label. Yeah, okay, so all right. Block ID. Okay. Important UUIDs are the file system of the LVM, new LVM, partition labels, and UUIDs. Systems with GPT disk label support offer additional robust options for defined partitions at CFS tab. Partition labels and partition UIDs can be used to identify the block device's individual partitions regardless of what file system has been chosen for the partition itself. Partition labels and UUIDs are identified by the partition part label and or the part UUID prefixes and can be viewed nicely in the terminal by running block ID command. Output of an AMD EFI system using the discoverable partition block UUIDs may look like the following, which it does, only, Okay. While not always true for partition labels, using an UID to identify a partition in FSTab provides a guarantee that the system bootloader will not be confused when looking for a certain volume. The naming of the block device, I know I skipped stuff there, including how and in what order the disks are attached to the system. They also could show up in a different order, depending blah, blah, blah. About FSTab, creating an FSTab file. So the Etsy FSTab file uses the table-like syntax. Every line consists of 6 fields, blah, 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 blah. I already know all that stuff. Nano, so we're going to do Vim. Thank you very much. That's Etsy FSTab. Okay. Now, BIOS legacy BIOS systems which we don't need. UFI system. Below is an example FS tab for file system which will boot via UFI firmware. Okay, so alright, so we need to go down here. We're going to, I'd actually much prefer to use the UFI, so we need to copy that stuff. So get out of this. So the ones we need are this one, and this one. Okay, we're gonna do some stuff here. So C, oops, Control Shift C. I have Kate installed. I do. Come on, Kate. New file. Control V. We're gonna do some editing here so that the copy and paste is much easier to do than in Vim. Okay, we can get rid of this stuff here. We don't need the part UID part. Get rid of that. Okay, get rid of block size. I'm pretty sure that this is the FI one. Okay, we'll use that. Oop, Control Z again. Right, and we'll leave that there. All right, Control C, get rid of that. Okay, now. All right. Let's go down here, go down to the bottom. V. All right, now. Now, we were going to do, so this one here is our root directory. So this is going to be mounted in root, okay, and it is the XFS, and we're going to do defaults. And I think that that's no a time, sure, and then 0, 1. Okay. This one here is our swap partition, so we're going to do none, and then I know that none of this stuff is lined up, but I don't really care right now. Swap, like so, and SW, and then 0, 0, like so. I don't think that they need to be lined up. I've never actually done one that's not lined up before. Wait a minute, hold on. Did I just fuck that up? I think I just fucked that up. I did fuck that up. See, I caught it, and that's good. So this is /EFI, like so, and this is VFAT, like so, and then UMask. I should just, copying this stuff. 0077, comma, TZ equals UTC, and then 0, 2. Okay. And yes, I do think I have to remove the quotes. This one is swap. Okay. Type none. Swap. SW 0, 0. All right. All right. ZZ. All right. DPS UEFI part ID. Below is an example of it for the disk formatted with GPT disk label and discovery partition. Blah blah blah. I don't need to do that. Use auto. When auto is used for the third field, it makes the mount command guess what the file system should be. Don't need to do that. Networking information. It is important to note that the following sections are provided to help the reader quickly set up their system to partake in a local area network. For systems running OpenRC, a more detailed reference for network setup is available in the Advanced Network Configuration section, which is covered near the end of the handbook. Systems with more specific network needs may need to skip ahead, then return here to continue to the rest of the installation. For more specific system D network setup, please review network partition. Host name. Sure. All right, network. All right. We're technically out of time. If I can get to the part where I reboot, I'm gonna be very happy. I'm hoping I'm very close. Choose the one which seems the best suited for the system needed. So I just did that one. Hopefully that's the one that I was supposed to choose. Are we close to installing Grub? I hope we're really close because I got to get out of here. The host file. All right. We're doing some... hopefully I did the networking stuff right. I'm assuming I probably didn't. I should have started earlier. Damn it, I still did nano. It's fine, I'm here now. Weak password too short. Don't care. Don't care. Shut down a system. Open up RC and enjoy all of the comments in the file. Hey, the handbook has a freaking sense of humor. Review the settings and change where needed. Next, open conf.keymaps to handle keyboard configuration. Edit it to configure the selected right keyboard. Okay, vim, let's see, conf.d, keymaps. That's right, so we should be able to just keep it that way. Finally, edit hardware clock to set the clock options, edit according to personal preference. Set clock to UTC if you want your hardware clock is set to UTC, also known as Greenwich Mean Time. If that clock is set to the local time, then your clock to local. Note that if you're dual boot with Windows, then you should set it to local, which I don't do. We're just going to leave that where it is. It's fine. Greenwich. I know. Greenwich. I know. Just bear with me. It's been a fucking 12-hour day. I don't know what I'm saying at this point. So you're trying to say that I need to do the RC parallel yes thing? All right. Well, we will go back up here and do that then. Yeah, I haven't set the time zone. I'll have to do that later. I'm pretty sure I can do that post-install. I mean, you can on every other distro. I don't know why this would be different. All right. Installing tools. Hopefully one of those tools is freaking Grub so I can get the hell out of here. Well, one of those things is not Grub. Okay. We're still not there yet. All right. All right. We're going to be here till 11 o'clock. All right, some tools are missing from the Stage 3 archive because several packages provide the same functionality. It is now up to the user to choose which ones to install. The first tool to decision... Yeah, Grub is the next section. Yeah, that's where I need to be. Thank you. Let's see here. The first tool to decision is a logging mechanism for the system. The editor in me is like, the fuck are you talking about, dude? All right, Unix and Linux have an excellent history of logging capabilities. If needed, everything that happens on a system can be logged via a log file. YOLO, skip the logger. I think I'll just do it. All right. To install a system logger of choice, emerge it. On OpenRC, add it to the default run level using RC update. The following example installs and activates. Works for me. That's what's default. Then we're good. Hopefully there's just as much on this page that you need to skip as all the rest. Alright. Optional cron daemon. Yeah, I need probably only... although it is optional and not required for every system, it is wise to install a cron daemon. A cron daemon execute commands, blah, 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 blah. All cron daemons support cron levels. Gentoo offers several possibility. We're gonna do this one here. I've always used Cronny as my cron daemon, like every single time. So I don't think I've ever used anything else. All right. System D, optional file indexing. In order to index the file system to provide faster file location, install mlocate. Sure. To be able to access the system remotely after installation, SSHD must be configured to start on boot. That's easy enough. If the serial console access is needed, which is possible in case of remote servers, a getty must be configured. Uncomment the serial code in that. I don't think I need to do that. Optional cell completion. Sure. Eventually, I'll want to probably SSH into this, yes. That's why I'm doing all this stuff. Like I said, I don't think that I need to do this part here. If serial console access is needed, which is possible in case of remote servers, a getty must be configured. And if I do need to do it, I can always do it afterwards. It's not that big a deal. Did that. Suggested time synchronization. Okay. Okay. All right. File system tools. All right. So it is recommended that sysblock IO schedule UDEV tools is installed for the correct schedule behavior. Okay. Well then, if it's recommended, then just do it, bro. Okay, networking tools, installing the AD. Yeah. Most users need DHCP client to connect to their network. If none were installed, then the system might not be able to connect to the network, thus making it impossible to download a DHCP client afterwards without statically configuring an IP address, which is no, don't do that. I have a feeling I'm compiling something that's bigger than I wanted to, but oh well. Thank you. All right. I'm not sure if we need to do this. I think, did we already do this? Anything gonna hurt to run it again? Okay, and then this one here, yeah. This computer does have wireless on it, but we don't use it, but it can still be installed. All right. And Gentoo is a massive waste of time and power. Okay. Well, then don't install it. All right. Configuring the bootloader. Yay! All right. Selecting the bootloader. We already did that. Default grub. All right. Emerge. When using an older BIOS system supporting an MBR, no additional configuration is needed in order to emerge grub. I know for UEFI users, which is for me, running the above command will output the enabled grub platforms values before merging. When using UEFI capable system, users will need to ensure grub platforms EFI 64 is enabled, as it is the case by default. If that is not the case for setup, grub platforms EFI 64 will need to be added to the portagemake.conf file before merging grub so that the package will be built by with EFI functionality. So, okay. And then all right. All right. So grub dash install slash dev nvme 0. All right. Who's messaging me? right, we're going back here. All right. Before we do this, actually, clear this lsblk just one more time. Okay, so grub install. Ah, thank you. I'm glad you caught that, Matt. Appreciate that. Save me from being a boo-boo. Alright, upon successful installation, the output should match the output of the previous command. If the output does not match exactly, then proceed to debug and grub, otherwise jump to configure step. Alright. Next, generate the grub configuration based on the user configuration specified in etc grub file and etc-grub.d scripts. In most cases, no configuration is needed by users, as grub will automatically detect which kernel to boot and what the root file system is. It is also possible to append kernel parameters using the command line variable, which we shouldn't need to do. Okay. Make sure I'm doing the right one again. The output of the command must mention that at least one Linux image is found. All right. Everything in there looks fairly recent, fairly decent. OS probable will not be executed to detect other. Always says that. All right. Alternative system D1. Nope. 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 Alternative 2 if I stub. Nope. 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 Other alternatives. All right. Now, I think that this is all part of that other part, right? Reinstall kernel, blah, 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 right? This is all part of the EFI stub thing. So we can go up here now to, because there's no button down here that says continue on, which is weird. For other options, right, I think I can go down here and say, wait a minute, hold on a second. Go back here. All right, rebooting the system. Exit the ch-rooted environment and unmount all mounted partitions. Then type in that one magical command that initiates the final true test. Reboot. Okay, so exit. Okay. There were stop jobs. Okay, exit again. Okay. All right. I don't know what that means. The fuck? No, come back here. Where are you going? All right. All right. So the keyboard that I'm using is an Alice layout. So if I hit Super L, it locks the thing. All right. All right. So we need to. I don't know what that's doing. So we'll just okay. So CD umount -L /mnt. We're just fucking copying it, dude. Sudo bang bang. Okay. Sudo target is busy. Well, you know what? Close program. Try again. There we go. All right. All right. Whew. Dum, 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 dum. There's Grub. I'm crying. Come on. Come on, you son of a bitch. All right. And Of course, my monitor went blank. All right, and you guys can't see it either. Wait a minute. Yeah, you can. Wait. My monitor went completely blank. All right, so my, for whatever reason, you guys can see this. I can't see it. Oh, yeah, okay. All right. So, the good news is it worked. The bad news is I can't see it on my monitor. I can see it in OBS, so I know that it worked. So I can actually type in, wait a minute. I think it's root, right? Yeah. So yeah, I logged in. It's there. Hallelujah. Okay. So emerge. I can barely see this, by the way, because let's actually make this much easier on myself. Put it on a different monitor. Oops, wrong one. Super 6. Oops. I don't know what I did there. Super 1. There we go. Root TLC. All right, emerge. I can barely see that. You guys gotta remember, I'm looking at this through OBS. I don't know why my monitor stopped detecting the capture card. It's really weird. Anyways. Yeah, that's what I was doing, Ping. I was merging fast bits, but I can barely read it. There you guys go. Gentoo. Yes, TLC is the password. Okay? I'm not going to give you guys my real password. All right. Hallelujah. All right. I know. That took exactly 3 hours. All right. There we go. All right. All right. That's going to be where we stop for today. Next week on the stream, we'll set up everything else that needs to go along with it in order to get me some GNOME or Hyperland or something. Probably GNOME, since how that's the profile that I selected. So, and it was not a speed run, Bandana. It was not a speed. I would never do that. I would lose. But Gentoo is installed. Holy hell. All right. So anyways, I have got to get out of this room. It is about 90,000 degrees in here. Turns out compiling shit turns up the heat. Next video, installing an LFS. No. Anyways, no, absolutely not. I will never install LFS. It's just not going to happen. Actually, you know what? I tell you what, I will install LFS. You guys are going to have to get a pool together, and I will do it for $10,000. That's my price. I ain't cheap. And Jonathan, you can go back and watch the replay if you really want to. It's all 3 hours of it. Anyways, I think that's where I'm going to stop, and I just desperately need to get out of this room. So, thanks everyone so much. Thank you so damn much. You guys can actually, we'll just put me on camera and say, hi, hello. I actually appeared on camera, and yes, I took my glasses off because I'm done. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I truly do appreciate it. If you stuck with me throughout the whole time, I appreciate it. If you helped me in the chat, I truly appreciate it. Without you guys, I probably would still be here. So, thank you so very much. If you haven't hit the like button already, hit the like button. If you haven't hit subscribe, make sure you hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate that. I'm also looking over here because that's where my face is. Normally I look up here, that's where my face is, so I'm a little confused. Anyways, I think shop.thelinuxcast.org, buy yourself a hat. I have a hat here. You too can have a hat. I know someone expected me to give away a hat. I don't know where that rumor got started. I'm not giving away any hats at the moment. So you had to, if you want one, you're going to have to buy one. So yeah, shop.thelinuxcast.org. I have to pimp that while I'm at it. Anyways, I'm going to sign off, and I will see you guys